So Predators is the third movie in the Predator franchise, and okay, there's two. Alright, there's three. Okay, these look familiar. Okay. Don't panic. Don't freak out. Oh. Hello, ladies and gentlemen and movie lovers of all kind, and welcome back to another Super Series Tuesday. And for today, we will be wrapping up the Predator franchise with the third and final film, Predators. Well, at least, of course, until the upcoming The Predator, but that'll be a new release review. So Predators was released in 2010. It was directed by Nimrod Antal and stars actually a pretty sizable cast. Adrien Brody, Alice Braga, Topher Grace, Danny Trejo, Walton Goggins, Mahershala Ali. Yeah, it's a pretty big cast for this movie of all pretty relatively well-known actors and actresses. And the story, I'm actually going to keep it kind of vague if you haven't seen this movie, because this movie actually has a lot more going for it than the other two Predator films. So a group of soldiers and mercenaries and prisoners, they all randomly end up in the middle of the jungle. They all wake up mid-free fall, parachute comes out on its own, they crash in the jungle, and that's all I'm going to say, because honestly, other than that, this movie, it really does try to keep you guessing. So to kick off the positives, guys, I'm just going to give it to the cast overall. There was no really one big standout, and I know some people do have problems with this cast, with certain characters and such, but me, not at all. I actually love this cast. It is the most colorful and diverse cast of any of the Predator films. Yes, the Commandos were great in the first one, Arnie and his team, but they were all just Commandos. The second one, I didn't care for anybody really, again, besides Bill Paxton, but that's whatever. This one, you do have a giant cast, the biggest cast, I think, in a Predator movie, and they're all from different stretches of life, and that's what I love about it. You have Adrien Brody, who's like a Black Ops mercenary. Walton Goggins is a death row convict. You have a Russian Spetsnaz soldier, Danny Trejo, from the Mexican cartel. These people are from all different parts of the planet Earth, and they're very different. They're very unique. And although, they're not the most perfect characters, which I will get to later, I enjoy the cast for what they were. They weren't just so simple. It wasn't just a group of commandos. It wasn't just a group of police officers. They're different people from all different aspects of life, all soldiers in one form of another, all killers. And honestly, I love the cast in this movie. And next is the Predators, with a big old S on it, just like the name. Yes, there are multiple Predators in this movie, and each and every one of them, they all have their own different kind of look to them. I believe there's one they call him the Berserker Predator. That's the one on the cover, usually, that has like the big kind of jaw to him. That's why I'm doing these motions before I said anything. And then there's almost like a scout one who has like this kind of almost drone thing that comes off his shoulder and flies around. And then they have another one, I guess, who's just a regular Predator. You don't see them like communicating or anything like that, but they're still badass as hell. I've given major props to all the Predators throughout the franchise. They're just badass. Again, the way they cut people down, the way they kill their victims or their prey, just the way they do their hunting, the traps they set up, everything about the Predators I really love. I think they're super cool, and in this one you get 3 of them. And next is the twists in this movie. Yes, there are a few twists and turns in this movie, and some that I really appreciate, honestly, and they're enjoyable. You may see them coming. There's a big one that I do see coming, but for the most part, there's quite a few in here that you honestly don't really see coming. And then there's some twists in this movie which I really enjoy, something I appreciate that you don't get in the other Predator movies. I mean, I guess Predator, when it first released, was kind of a twist like, hey, it's an alien, and then a couple of smaller twists. But this movie has at least 3 big twists I can think of right off the top of my head. But this movie, I think it's honestly the most compelling narrative of the 3 Predator films, and there are some good twists and turns in here. And next is the action of this movie. The action is very well shot. There's a lot of gunfights, and they're bigger gunfights, because when all these people drop into the middle of the jungle, they all have these big badass weapons with them. So you have Alice Braga has her sniper rifle, Adrien Brody has his AI-12, which is a big shotgun. That's like an automatic shotgun. The Spetsnaz guy, he has just a giant minigun. Danny Trejo has 2 submachine guns he just kind of walks around with. They all have different weapons, and it leads to a lot of very interesting and very big bombastic gunfights. They're super fun to watch. The action in this is so well shot. They aren't like very frequent or anything like that. A lot of this is the exploring and trying to figure out like who dropped them into the middle of the jungle, where are they in the world, things like that. The movie does focus on that very heavily, and again I will touch on that later, but when the action scenes do hit, they hit hard and they're fun as hell to watch. Next is something that I really enjoy in this movie, and it is kind of a surprise. Not really, I don't think it's like too much of a surprise, like something you shouldn't see coming, but there are these things in this movie, I just call them predator dogs. I don't really know if there's really a specific name for them. If they are, feel free to drop a comment, let me know. But yeah, the predator kind of dogs, the hellhounds in this movie, are super badass. They're just coated in horns, they have these big gnarly teeth, they're fast, they're brutal, they're strong, they're very, very entertaining to watch. There's a whole sequence dedicated to just them. I think you only see them the one time, but it's a really, really heart-pounding sequence. They're chasing the characters around, they have them scattered, they're trying to pick them off one by one. It is really, really entertaining. Next is the setting in this movie. With my Predator 2 review, I did not feel Los Angeles was a very good fit for the Predator, so I am happy that they went back to the jungle. The jungle is where the Predator belongs. Bringing the Predator and adding 2 more, putting them in the jungle, it was a great idea and one that definitely paid off. Now, the last 2 positives about this movie. One is the final fight. The final fight is similar to the first Predator movie, but I enjoyed it way more because, you know, it's a minor spoiler, I guess, for the first Predator. But yeah, Arnie does this big, elaborate setup, takes a lot of time out of the movie, like 5-10 minutes at least, maybe even a little bit more than that. And then he just goes and gets his ass kicked, and then he kind of just, dumb luck happens, and that's how the movie kind of ends. Not with this movie. The movie, there still is a bit of a setup, but I felt the plan was much more thought out, and I thought the end fight was really good because it wasn't just a one-sided fight that had all of a sudden a big shebang and an end. No, it was a very back-and-forth fight. There's actually kind of 2 end fights in this, so there's like one kind of happens, and then it leads into another. Both end fights are supremely entertaining. Honestly, I had so much fun watching them. I was like vibrating. I was like, oh, like it's so awesome. They're so fun to watch. And lastly is just the ending to this movie. It leaves an ambiguous ending, and honestly, I would have liked a Predators 2 or a sequel to this movie with the way that this one ends. It was a nice ending, and it was one that I'd be like, yeah, it'd be really cool, because it would get rid of the mystery element if they did a Predators 2 with the same cast that was left alive, and then whatever happened at the end of this movie. I think that would have made a very entertaining sequel. Sadly, I highly doubt we're going to get one since we're getting The Predator, which seems like kind of a soft reboot, remake, continuation. But regardless, I really like the ending of this movie, and it's a shame that we have not seen a sequel to it. There is actually a middle ground for this one as well, and like back-to-back middle ground, just wow. So the middle ground for this one is the fact that it's almost like they took advantage of it, maybe. I highly doubt it was planned when this movie came out for The Predator now, like 8 years later, but I feel like maybe they even got the idea from The Predator to this, because at one point a character explains how there are bigger ones. They say something like there's 2 types of them. There's ones that are bigger and they like to hunt the little ones. Well, if you've watched any of the trailers for The Predator, there's an ultimate predator, they call it, which is basically a much bigger predator that just basically walks in and whoops the predator's ass. So yeah, I feel like that could have been a lead off, or maybe it's something that when they were making the Predator, saying like, you know, what can we do to make this continuation? Well, this character said this in Predators, that there are bigger ones. Bigger one. Now for the negatives, and right off the top of my head, I know this is something that bothered me very heavily in this movie, and that is the fact that you are spoon-fed big gulps of information multiple times throughout this movie. It's almost just like big data dumps right into your face of information that kind of covers things from the past 2 movies, but I don't think that was a great idea, because for me personally, Predators was the first one that I saw. I saw it when it was brand new back in 2010, maybe 2011. But yeah, so it feels like there's these big data dumps. It's not even just like a little bit of information, it's like the Predators do this, this, this. It's like, and the explanations are okay to the reason that they know all these things all of a sudden, because as you know, they've never encountered these creatures before. So these big giant data dumps just come, it'll be like they'll have a firefight, and then all of a sudden Adrian Brody will be like, we know they have this kind of weapon, we know they have thermal vision, we know they have cloaking device, we know they have this, they have that. And then someone else says like, oh yeah, and I noticed this, 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 and they name it. It's not just like one thing, like, oh, we know that they have a cloaking device, like it was in Predator. No, it's like, once you get this data dump, it's like 5-6 things in a row about the Predator, and then it's like 5-6 things in a row about the location, just because there was a bit of water on the rock. Like, you know, it's just these random things lead to these big data dumps, and of course it's all 100% accurate information that we know from the previous 2 movies, but that these characters don't. And I just feel like this happened because they couldn't really find a way to naturally fit it into the story. If they were to try to find a way to kind of wedge it in and make it feel like it had a flow and natural, this movie would have surpassed its runtime by a lot. It clocks in about 1 hour and 47, so I think it would have been well over 2 hours if they would have found proper ways to put this information in there. So that really bothered me. It was just like 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever, of action and exploring, and all of a sudden one little thing just sets these characters off into naming like 5 to 10 things that they know, they now all of a sudden know about the Predators and about the location, about other people and stuff, and it bothered me that we were just getting these just massive dumps of information that really felt misplaced, and you honestly don't feel like the characters deserve this information. Like, how did you get all of that from that? Next in the negatives is the CGI in this movie. The CGI isn't too heavy. When it's there, it's really not that good, and I think the biggest thing about the CGI that bothered me was the CGI gore in this movie. In both of my last 2 reviews on Predator and Predator 2, I praised the practical effects with the gore, saying how awesome it was, how cool it was to watch, and that's what I love about 80s, 90s action movies. This movie went full-blown CGI gore, and it shows it is not as good as the previous 2 Predator movies in that department, so yes, the CGI is getting a negative. And next is something I typically don't complain about, because honestly I usually like it in my R-rated movies, especially action movies and war movies, and that's swearing. I feel like if you're really in World War II, you're gonna swear. I feel like if you're actually in the streets in a gunfight in some action movie getting shot at, your friends are dying, your family, you're going to be swearing. You're not gonna be like, oh frig, oh screw you guys. Like, you're gonna be just dropping F-bombs and swearing left, right, and center and not caring at all. And typically I don't mind this at all in movies, but I honestly felt like there was a major overuse of swearing in this movie, because it didn't have a flow to it. It seemed like every second word was an F-bomb. It felt too much. It felt excessive. And this is coming from someone who loves The Wolf of Wall Street, which I believe, aside from the documentary, literally titled F***K, I'm pretty sure that The Wolf of Wall Street has the second most F-bombs in a movie ever, and I love that movie. And I don't feel the swearing is excessive at all in that movie, honestly. It feels natural. In this movie, it doesn't. It feels like they're just cramming in these words all the time for no reason, and honestly, it was that excessive, and it felt that misplaced that it annoyed me. And second, last on the negatives list is that although I said I did enjoy the cast and I do enjoy the characters, they're very one note. They don't progress at all. There's no character progression. There's like no backstory. They're enjoyable, but they're enjoyable on just this one level. If you go any deeper than that, there's so many flaws in the characters, and like I said, they don't progress. You don't get anything from them. It's just the convict plays the convict. It's fun to watch, he's enjoyable, but there's nothing else. Like the Black Ops mercenary dude, he's just that. The guy who's part of the Spetsnaz, he's just that. They're very one-note characters, although they are very enjoyable to watch, there's nothing else there besides what they are. And lastly is the fact that this movie has a much slower pace. That's why it ends like kind of like the last of the negatives. It's not something that bothered me a whole lot, but I know a lot of people will be bothered by it. But I do understand that a lot of people are going to realize that this movie has a much slower pace and it might drag on for a lot of people, so just be aware going in that it does take its time. Like I said, there's a lot more mystery in this movie than there is in the other ones, like who put them in the middle of the jungle? Where are they in the world? How do they get back to where they want to be? Things like that. There's a lot more mystery in this movie than the other Predator films. For me, it worked wonders. I love that aspect of this movie. For others, it may not, so just be mindful. The movie does have a much slower pace than the previous 2 Predator films. So, with all that being said, guys, I honestly think this movie, again, kicks a lot of ass, like the Predators in it. I think the characters are great. I think it's a super enjoyable watch. I know, honestly, I've seen a lot of people in my comments in the past 2 videos kind of bashing this movie and saying it's completely lackluster. I 110% disagree. I really enjoy this movie. I think it's such a fun thrill ride, beginning to end. It does have its flaws, and they are pretty big flaws. But with all that being said, guys, I'm going to be giving Predators a 7.5 out of 10. So folks, if you like this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. Let me know, what do you truly think of Predators? Where does it land for you ranking among the 3 Predator films? And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and that's a wrap.